I think you came along just after Mr. Howe. How did you first become involved with us?
I actually had a good friend who, at the time, her name is Claire Lucas. We went to high school together, and I think there was a pianist who was playing before me. He ended up leaving. And Claire told me, she said, if you're interested in playing jazz, we'd love to have you. And so I ended up joining my junior year of high school. I think it was about halfway through my junior year. And that was actually my start playing jazz. So it was really all through Claire, and then everything blossomed from there.
Okay. Just a quick question. I'm going to go on by just because I know that a lot of your work, you're as much known for your work on drums as piano, but which came first for you?
Oh yeah, the drums actually came first. I started drums when I was 5 years old, and my drum teacher always told my father, he said, he should really learn how to play piano as well, so that way I could understand more about music theory and everything else outside of just the drum set. And so I was taking classical lessons and just kind of stuck from that point on.
Oh, so it sounds like the teacher is subscribing to that old thing that drummers aren't real musicians, which I've heard it's not true, but I've heard many people try to say that. So,
right, that's right.
Okay, let's talk about Mr. Wynter. Again, you were with us now. Coming in, you came in as a violinist, correct?
Yes, I came in, I think it was in 2013, playing violin. Like Julia mentioned, I didn't have any experience playing jazz. I started up on the Suzuki method, so I was playing a lot of traditional stuff, a lot of like classical and Baroque era type pieces. And I was just curious to, see what else I could do on the violin. And jazz was one of the first opportunities I had to be able to do that. So.
Okay. All right. And getting to Mr. Mason. Now, Mr. Mason, I do remember you from the very early days. I think we became involved with the organization around the same time, and knew great things were ahead for you. But for those of us who don't know, tell us a little bit about when you first got involved.
Yeah, I got involved, it was in 2012, because I graduated from high school in 2016. And so, much like everybody said before, I guess it was, not only was it my first time, I guess, playing jazz in an institutionalized setting, it was also my first time playing music in general. Oh my God, Jesus Christ.
There he is. There is.
Lonnie, stop.
He had a lot less hair in those days, yes, y'all. But that's what people are a little bit more familiar with now. Yes, Mr. Mason looking very youthful and relaxed there in the early days. That first picture you did see him with the great Donald Harrison, who had been one of our clinicians in the past. So good to see those photos. And I know Sean doesn't want to see him, but it takes us back a little bit. And finally, Veronica, last but certainly not least, tell us about how, and I think you may have been in tenure, one of our, had the tenure of one of the greatest links with JAI, JAC, and being involved with our music program. So tell us about your start.
So I joined then JAI, I want to say it was 2014. It was when I was in 8th grade. And my dad is a jazz enthusiast and trumpet player. And so he was the one who kind of found this. He was just doing some research and he was like, oh, you should audition for this, because I was just starting to get into jazz at that point. I was doing mostly classical before that. And I didn't really have an outlet to play with people. And so that's ultimately what JI became for me, was a way to play, music with people rather than at home, with play-alongs or something. And so, yeah, I'm just super grateful and super, super happy to be here.
Okay. And we're super happy to have you as well. All right, let's go back. We're going to run through this before we start letting everybody jump together, but I do want to get to one other question. We talked about where you started, and now everybody's at different phases in their career. Some are students, some are out in the professional world, some are doing a combination of both. But I just want to share, because everyone definitely wants to know, if someone's already come to me in the chat to find out, what are they doing now? So let's go and find out what you're doing now, what you're studying, maybe what you're playing, where you're playing. And let's look, of course, with recognition that the pandemic has changed a few things for us, but pre-pandemic, before this all put us into a different place, what were you doing? So Julia, let's start. What are you up to these days?
So I just graduated from UNC Greensboro with a bachelor's in jazz studies and in French. And now I'm starting a Master of Social Work program at NYU. And I'm looking forward to combining what I've learned through community arts and music education into the social work field.
Okay, that's fascinating. And also with a major in jazz studies and French. I mean, just reminds me, made me think of that show that came out on Netflix, The Eddy, about this jazz club over in Paris. I don't know if you're getting ready to do anything along those lines, but that's fascinating. What it looks like you're going to go into, but hopefully jazz will still be a part of your life in some kind of way in the future.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, great. Okay, let's go with Mr. Howe. What are you up to these days?
Well, right up until the pandemic, I was playing full time, kind of just taking whatever work I could get wherever I could, and it was working out pretty well right up until March.
Mm-hmm, yeah. March did bring on a different world for all of us in some unfortunate ways. So now wait a minute, Lonnie's going to be sharing something. Yes, and there is, yes, Lonnie, like the mom that she is bringing out all the embarrassing pictures. Thankfully she has none of me. So, I mean, all of mine are within the last 7-8 years. So there's only so much embarrassment that can go on.
But, you can't fake swag like that.
There we go. So, Mr. Wynter, besides, as it says, expanding the landscape of soul with the bow of his violin and a debut album that refuses to be overlooked. Now, that's what I've heard about you recently in print. We know you have a debut album out called These Past 2 Years. So, other than and congratulations on that, but tell us about a few things that you're working on, other than that fine debut album.
Yeah, I've been playing professionally for the past couple of years. As well as the album I've been working on. I've been doing studio work for other artists in the area. And I've also been playing in a lot of bands around town. Last year, I joined a Zac Brown tribute band. And we've been able to travel a bit, and that's been a great experience so far.
Okay, very nice. And we'll go on to, and there we have some other pictures that Lonnie has from back in the day. If you see a few other recognizable faces there. And now let's talk about Mr. Allison. Well, besides in your vehicle driving to wherever it is you're on your way to at this point, what else are you up to these days, Mr. Luther Allison?
You muted.
Yeah, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
There we go. Sean looking out for me, as always. But but yes, I'm still performing. Thankfully, I'm not performing publicly, but of course, beforehand, just as everybody else was saying, I was performing full time, and I also teach at the Calhoun School in New York City. I teach I teach high school there, and so that's been a tremendous experience. But just as of recent, I've been performing online and doing different live stream concerts, and of course, still teaching online virtually. And also in the meantime, just trying to write and compose and just get some more music together for some other projects in the future. So, oh yeah, there goes a good, there
he goes.
There's a few throwbacks right there. Wow.
Oh yes.
Yes. Oh, I remember that one. Whew.
And also, Luther, being the humble man that he is not telling you about a few projects, but I tell you, he's been visiting at least my radio studio in quite a few ways over the last year, just A lot of work he's done on the Positone record label. He has been the pianist on Diego Rivera's Connections, on Marcus Howell's Get Right. He played the drums on Michael Deeze's 2 albums, one of them called Reaching Out. He was the pianist. On the other one, he was the drummer. Also working with a group, a kind of young player super group called the Becoming Quintet. Their One Track Mind album, he was the pianist. He is also now the pianist for Ulysses Owens, who's a very fine drummer, so I guess that's why I didn't have him drum. He is now the pianist for Ulysses Owens' Generation Y Quintet. So although Mr. Allison didn't want to tell you, he is quite busy these days. We're proud of everything that he's doing. So, Mr. Mason, speaking of someone who spends a lot of time in my feed, whether I want him to or not, and I do, but Mr. Mason, besides taking over Smalls on regular, what have you been doing?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just before quarantine and during quarantine, just figuring it out, you know, just trying to play and just trying to get better. I've been shedding and just trying to get better, you know. So not too much. I try to keep an open mind and try to continue to progress.
Okay, you're gonna make me do it again. All right, fine. So I'll do it. So we'll talk a little bit about the WBGO Evening of Solo Piano at Dizzy's. Of course, your very fine concert, I must say, that you did with your trio also at Dizzy's in New York. The Ellington Through the Ages with Wynton Marsalis. Also your tour with Bradford that went on for a while. And also, if you follow Mr. Mason on Instagram, you also know about Sean Mason Fashion. He is becoming not only a fine pianist, but a bit of a fashion icon around in the New York area. So we'll just, since you made me say it, I was hoping you would, but Sean, you've always been shy, and I appreciate that, and very humble, but you know, I'm not, so I'll talk about you for you. So glad to hear about it. And now, Miss Veronica Leahy, who already, before she left JAC, had compiled an impressive list of credits that we all know about: Colbert, the Grammy Band, Young Jazz Competition. So let's talk about some of the other things you've been doing since you arrived up at Harvard/Berkeley.
Yeah, so I just finished my freshman year of college. Wouldn't have expected to be, in this situation, but we're making the best of it. Yeah, so I'm doing a dual degree program at Harvard and Berkeley College of Music. It's a fun life going to 2 different schools. It's busy but fun. Been just trying to write as much music, practice as much music, just approach music from every angle that I possibly can right now. I'm trying to be a sponge. So I think that's probably, that's been what I've been up to.
And there she is, Veronica, during those days. That's yep, she's got all the pictures. Let's talk a little bit about now, since you've all been out there and you're working in various degrees in the professional world, a lot of things that I've come across, and there are some things that you said, and even some of you have alluded to, the fact that you learned a lot of great lessons when you were involved with JazzArts. We'll just leave off the I of the C, so we'll just say JazzArts. We know what we're talking about. So when you were involved with JazzArts, you learned some great lessons. I'll let anybody answer this one who wants to. What's one of the most helpful lessons now for you in your post-high school life that you learned while you were at JazzArts? Something that you're really glad that we taught you.
I'll go ahead and jump in.
Jump on in.
Somebody else. I think one of the biggest things for me was just, at least mentorship was a big thing, at least that I realized. Being able to have people like Lavelle Bradford coming through consistently, and Chad Lawson was there consistently while I was there also, and Michael Hackett, and everybody was just very serious about pouring into the next generation. And so that was something that I really valued. And the amount of people that at the time JAI brought in was incredible. I know it was still early for them, but they seemed to always have people come, and they were very consistent as well. I even remember, I think Sean and I actually went out to 1 or 2 of them when Lavelle was doing some sessions. So that kind of helped to
get us a little more involved in the scene. But I forget the name of the place. It was over, I think, on like West, I can't even remember, East Boulevard or West Boulevard. But anyways, yeah, I think mentorship was one of the biggest things for me while I was there.
Okay. Anyone else? That same question. Thank you for getting the ball rolling on that, Luther. Anybody else want to jump in there? Great lesson you learned.
Yeah, I'll chime in. I'll like what Luther said about the mentorship. I definitely second that. Hackett, Lavelle, Mr. Bradford, all of those cats that came through to really help us at such a young age. I also think accessibility was a big thing for me, and to be able to be exposed to this music in the city of Charlotte at the time that I was coming up, especially since I didn't go to an arts high school or middle school or anything. It was very important for me as a young person, because my mind was so open, being young and curious about different things. It was easier for me to tap into a art form of jazz, and to kind of connect that to what's going on, going back to school Monday through Friday, and then to come to JAI on Sundays. It was a very good experience. I was also connected with people that I wouldn't have been connected with until maybe later in my life, like Veronica. She went to a completely different high school than I did, and like many others that I was connected with, even before Veronica. We all came from completely different places of Charlotte, and we were all brought together through this music, and we had to learn how to deal with each other, and we had to learn how to deal with each other, different personalities, different musical tastes, all of that, and it was a good experience for us as high schoolers before we go out into this real world to be able to learn how to deal with each other in that kind of way. And I really thank Lonnie and OC and Curtis and everybody who helped facilitate that and way of dealing with this. And I thank Lonnie for putting up with my tardiness. I was late every but I'm still working on it, but we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there.
You were worth all that tardiness. I'm just saying, Sean.
Well, we'll just say, but something you'll learn if you clearly you haven't played with Mr. Ron Carter yet on a regular basis, because I know I was thinking about Mr. Carter. That's one of his things. And I remember anybody who would listen, I would always tell the lessons about Ron Carter and tardiness. Even when he was with Miles, he'd always be the first on the stand waiting for everybody else, because punctuality is very important. But we're glad you're learning and working on that. Anybody else want to handle that question? Great lesson. Take one more. Great lesson that you learned while you were with Jazz Arts.
Just to piggyback on the Sean's point, like one of the things that always held true anytime I was talking to some older cats, like guys like Troy Kahn and Will Campbell, they were coming in when I was there. And the two lessons that always came up were, if you want to play music, show up early and don't be a jerk. And if you can do those two things, then it's less about how well you play. It's more about like, we can call that guy.
Mm-hmm. That's a great lesson. That's right to it. Show up early and don't be a jerk. I like that one a lot. Anybody else want to share on that one? Because I got another question for you. Veronica, go ahead. Veronica, I saw you wanted to get in. Go ahead then. Go ahead.
I just want to second everything that everyone's been saying, and especially what Sean was saying. He's absolutely right that JI was a way for us to connect with people we would have never connected with otherwise. It was a way for, us to get out of our own bubbles. And I think it was just an extremely cool experience. And I just feel super grateful for that. And I think it was also a chance for me to have a community and sort of a hang when I don't know if I otherwise, actually, I feel pretty confident I wouldn't have otherwise. You know, and I think especially as like a young woman, especially like in this music, I think it's harder to find groups and hangs. And it was like a way for me to have a group. And it was like, okay, I can play this music with people. Here's a community. And, you know, it's sort of a place to learn and make mistakes and grow. And that was just really cool. So definitely to me, it was all about the community.
Okay. Now here's the next question, kind of playing off of that last one. So we talked about the great lessons you learned. Can anybody tell me, and this is again out for everybody, something that you wished you would have learned while you were with JazzArts? You've learned out there since you've been out in the world and said, oh, they taught us a lot of things, but I wish I would have known about blank. Anybody got an idea there? Well, since I'm gonna pick somebody, it would be like the teacher to pick somebody since I didn't hear from Mr. Wynter on the last one. Mr. Emmanuel Wynter, you've been out, you've got a very fine debut album out, and so you've obviously had to go through some of the ins and outs of the music world since leaving. What's something you wish you would have known while you were back in that relative bubble of being with us back in JazzArts?
Well, I know my vocabulary at the time, and this is due to my lack of experience, but I was willing to learn, but I kind of wish I had I was further along the way when I'd started. And that whole situation kind of led to some interesting experiences here and there. But I'd say it was still very helpful. But the first little bit that I spent in the jazz arts program was a huge culture shock, because it was just a lot of new stuff, new vocabulary coming onto me at the time. As far as something I wish I was taught then, that that I know now, I don't know. I personally can't think of it, but
Okay. All right. Anybody else have? Thanks for that answer. Anybody else have a thought on that one? Things that you've learned since then that you wish you had known. And this is no reflection on it. We're not saying anything reflection on the program. Just something they don't teach you in school that you learn about the music world when you get out in it.
Well, it's not as perfect, and the world isn't as safe a space as it was, but and I think it was a great place to grow and learn. So I wouldn't really change a thing there. But even just like as soon as I got to college, it was like, okay, you have to be so much more, you have to take so much more initiative. You have to really just take matters into your own hands so much more, because there is no one who's booking gigs for you and, creating, rehearsal spaces and rehearsal times and sort of curating things for you. And so like anything else, you grow up and you kind of have to, you just start having to do more things on your own.
I will say, now that Veronica mentioned that, there's a lot of the business aspects of being a musician that you're not really thinking about it until you have to come to face with it, like booking gigs and dealing with other musicians. Like I feel like the environment in jazz arts was pretty nurturing. So there wasn't really any issues that I had with any of the other players. We were all there to learn music, but when you go into the professional world, it's not always that cut and dry. Sometimes there's stuff going on here and there, and it's you just gotta deal with that as it comes. But yeah.
Okay, some of the things, sure, it is the tough musical world out there. A lot of things you do wish you would have learned that you didn't have the opportunity. Julia, I see you moving. Were you moving forward because you wanted to share something?
Sure. Yeah, I've been thinking about how, thinking back to JAI, like they're talking about how it was such a nurturing environment. I didn't ever really think about being like a woman in jazz and how we're like a minority for this art form. So I don't even remember being like one of the only girls. I feel like we were a pretty diverse group most of the time. Probably fewer women than men, but still pretty diverse. And then once I got to college, I was almost always one of two women in our entire jazz department. So it was it's very different. And I didn't really think about the gender gap in jazz so much as a young student in jazz arts. So now coming out of that and being older and noticing that more, it is something that,
Yeah, you got the picture treatment. Go ahead. Go ahead. Don't let the picture.
No, that's basically it.
Yeah, and well, if I can just add to that too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Julia, I totally feel that. I feel like, you know, like she said, I think that jazz arts was such a safe space in such a nurturing environment. And well, I think I was the only woman in the All-Stars for most of the time. It wasn't something that was constantly on my mind. And I would say that was one of the biggest shocks of going to college, was like it became a defining feature of my experience, and just something that like I couldn't run away from almost in any situation, except for maybe I'm involved with the Berklee Jazz and Gender Justice, which has been an amazing program led by Terry Lynn Carrington. And that's maybe been the only space when it hasn't been like a defining feature of my experience. And so, yeah, just absolutely, I would say that was a huge, just something that I've had to, grapple with and sort of adjust to as I've gone into the quote unquote real world.
Okay. Now you raised something interesting there, Veronica. You brought up something that I hadn't planned to ask as a question, but it's something that fascinated me. Now, the fact that you've been working with Terry Lynn Carrington and with a lot of great people that I'm sure you've run into up at Berklee and at Harvard and what you've been doing there. Let's talk to Veronica and to all of you. In addition to Veronica's interactions with Terry Lynn Carrington, tell us about some of the other very interesting musicians or people who've influenced you outside of your life. That may be in school or maybe in the professional world. Let's talk about some of the musicians or others involved with the industry who've been an influence on you to this point. So Veronica, do you want to, since you were already on that tip and talking about Terry Lynn Carrington, do you want to get us started off while everybody else is running through their Rolodexes?
Sure. Yeah, I've had the pleasure and honor to work with some really amazing people at both institutions. I've been working with Terry, with Chris Davis, incredible pianist, and with Vijay Iyer, who is teaches at Harvard, and he's been a mentor for me. Yeah, I mean, I really think this year one of my themes, I think, has been open mind, just having an open mind, and trying to learn from, there's something to learn from, no matter what someone, what kind of music someone might play, what instrument they play, whatever, there's probably a lot you can learn from them. And so I think I've really been sort of expanding my mentors outside of just jazz saxophonists, to really include just such a broader, kind of group of just professors and mentors, no matter sort of what field they might come from. And so yeah, I've been having a lot of fun.
Okay. And somebody else who wants to talk about some of the people who maybe directly or indirectly mentored you, or even just by their presence or what they've done influenced you in your career path at this point. Okay, well, it'll make me pick. All right, Mr. Allison, because I know you've been doing quite a bit out there. As we mentioned, your recorded catalog. So let's talk, Luther, about some of the influences that you've had to this point in your career.
Yeah, sure. I was actually just going to jump in too. I was on mute, so that was perfect timing. But
oh,
I think probably some of my biggest mentors, of course, early on. Really, I mean, both Lonnie and O.C. Davis, I am forever indebted to them. For me, joining that program definitely changed my life in a lot of ways, you know, and it was an incredible experience. And I mean, everybody associated with that I mentioned before, with Lavelle Bradford, and even seeing, I'm not sure, I haven't seen him in some time, but I remember seeing Charles Craig play around town a lot, and I know he would do some work with students. And but of course, Chad Lawson is another one. He was the one who actually recommended Donald Brown, who's another really big mentor for me. Incredible, in my favorite pianist. It's definitely biased since I studied with him in Tennessee, but Donald Brown has been an incredible mentor to me. And also Rodney Whitaker is another great mentor to me.
Bassist, yes.
But then, yeah, exactly, great bass player. And but also, you mentioned from Positone, and Michael Dees was one of the first people outside of a school context to really take me in and be very real and very transparent with me and very open with me about a lot of things regarding life, regarding music, regarding all sorts of stuff. So he's definitely been a big mentor. I would say like right around, it was like right before I went to Michigan State. I went to Michigan State for my master's, and that I knew him for probably about 2 years before that. And so he was definitely a huge mentor for me then. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, Rodney Whitaker, when I got to State, was and still is a huge mentor. I was with him earlier today, but those are the ones that come to mind.
Well, some great names there, great musicians, of course, starting with Lonnie and Osi. But I love the fact that you mentioned Donald Brown. He's just in my opinion one of the great pianists working today. A lot of people haven't heard his name, but he truly is a number one at the top of the list. Somebody else want to talk about mentors or influences on you at this point?
I'd feel remiss if I didn't at least bring up John Alexander one time in this conversation. That dude, not just for me, but for so many young musicians in Charlotte, he was just everywhere.
That's right.
He would come down to Rock Hill, and I mean, he lived in Gastonia, didn't he? Like, he would drive from Gastonia to Rock Hill to teach us theory after high school. And I know he did that with a lot of high schools, but anytime I wanted to, sit in, sometimes I'd go over to Lavelle's gig at Sullivan's, or Charles Craig would be playing, Lavelle would be playing drums. But then on Thursday nights, every Thursday night I could get away with it, I would go up to Blue and crash old Johnny A's gig. And around the time I started going to college, I'd try to bring a girl with me. And when I was up taking a solo or something, Johnny A would walk over and be like, "Hey, he's killing it, right? Yeah, he's really doing good." So not only would he teach me music, but he'd talk me up to my date.
There you go. It's good to have friends like that, man. We out there. People who make seem even big. You're already big, but look, check me out now. So that's very cool. Somebody else got some ideas? I'd love, because we just love to hear about mentors, and we love to give people love by talking about the people who've helped to make you what you are today. Anybody else have something to say in that area? Okay, if not, we'll talk about then.
I'll say something.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I have a lot of mentors, and like Veronica, I try to keep as open as a mind as possible, and I've always tried to maintain that outlook. But yeah, I mean, from Lonnie and OC to Lavelle and all of the staff at JazzArts, just a lot of local cats, like Luther, Phillip, a lot of the local cats that were older than me, Harvey, Tim Scott, like all that whole crew of people around that age, that helped you know, helped bring me up in a certain way. But also, I like to mention just the people around my age that are I see as mentors, and I think it's a lost art to talk about. You know, the people around my age that are doing great things, and I just want to show appreciation to everybody that's my age. I love everything that Luther's doing, everything Veronica's doing, everything that everybody here is doing that's at a very young age, and I consider all of you guys mentors as well. And of course, you know, like just the heavy cats. Donald Brown is a like great
Yes.
Like ghost mentor of mine, who I've met a lot and talked a lot in New York at some of my gigs and stuff. Of course, the Marsalis family has been a great mentor for my life, and just countless others in many different fields, not including that includes jazz, and I really echo what Veronica says about keeping an open mind, and I'm just grateful for the amount of people that have came into my life, and yeah.
Yeah, and if
Okay.
I may add, Curtis, I
Please,
also
yes.
feel remiss if I also didn't say that so many of the guys who were in the ensemble with me, especially when I first joined, hugely influential. And I'm looking at you, Sean, because yeah, I mean, Sean really showed me a lot of the ropes. I think back to that a lot. I mean, yeah, I owe so much to Sean, you know, Malcolm, you know, all those guys. And Lonnie and OC, and I see Will Campbell's on the call. He's also a huge mentor for me. Phil Thompson, so many guys back in Charlotte, and yeah, I miss them all so much.
Okay, and that's got one more question. I do see we're getting a few questions coming into the chat, but got one more thing just want to ask you. Obviously, we've alluded to the fact of the quarantine of COVID and everything along those lines. Anybody want to tell me about when this is over? What's the first thing that you want to do musically once we're able to move around a little bit more than we are now? Got any musical things that you want to do, or any things you really want to jump on once we're out and about again? Emmanuel, I can see you want to talk. Go ahead, man.
I'm gonna just continue to play and put myself out there, and I'm gonna try and put my new music out there, and just I'm basically, because of the whole pandemic, it's put all my plans on hold. So basically, I just want to hit the resume button and get on with things.
Okay, anybody else got big plans for when we can move around safely with a bit more ease? Anybody else got something in the
I'm just looking forward to I mean, there's some stuff planned, but I think honestly, I'm just looking forward to being able to share the bandstand with people in person again. It's definitely feels a lot different playing solo all the time, you know. So I mean, of course, there are some other projects coming up. We'd definitely like to put a record out soon and some other, you know, other stuff. But I'm just excited to get back on the bandstand and play with people on a regular basis again. I'm definitely missing that.
Okay, fantastic. Any other plans? Post-COVID plans?
I'm hoping it actually happens, but I'm scheduled to play at Middle C on October 16th.
Okay.
I'm playing the Chopin etudes on the piano and rearranging them for a jazz quartet. So it's practicing classical music is hard.
Yep.
You said it with such subtlety, but put it straight out there. It's hard. Yeah. I dig it.
Practicing is hard no matter what. I'm just saying.
Okay, so let's hear. We have some members of our audience who I know would love to have some questions. So Lonnie, do we have any questions in the queue, in the chat, that people would like to ask of our reunited All-Stars?
We actually do, but before we get to the questions, I'm going to pick on someone that's sitting and observing here, one of our participants, and that is someone whose name has come up quite a bit during this conversation, and that is Mr. Lavelle Bradford.
Yes.
So if I can unmute Mr. Bradford and have him to say a few words to these students, I would love to add you to the conversation, Lavelle.
Hey everybody,
Hey, Lavelle.
man, I'm just having just such a proud moment right now. It's really, maybe 3 steps from like, getting teary-eyed, you know what I mean? Because I'm just so proud. I don't want to take, any time from these guys getting their shine today. It's just, I think from the individuals that I worked with annually with the program to individuals who I got to know from a different circle, like Luther and also Phillip. I think those guys had passed through the program before I got there. I got a chance to work with Emmanuel, maybe his senior year in jazz camp, right before he left out. Julia was always in a different ensemble, but I would get a chance to, kind of skip over and kind of get with her and work this. And then we did, a couple of private things, which was great. Sean and Veronica, I got to work with the closest. But man, I'm so proud of you guys. I think the funniest thing is that when we talk about you guys bringing the North Carolina sound to different, places in the world like the East Coast and stuff like that, man, you guys are blazing trails. You're blazing trails. And I'm just so proud of you. And needless to say, if there's anything that you need from me, from advice to whatever, just hit me up. I'm always available to you. You guys are forever. Lonnie and Osi, I know I speak on behalf of them. You guys will always belong to Jazz Arts. So you guys wear the tag. Wear it well.
All right. Thank you, brother. Appreciate your great words, Lavelle Bradford. Lonnie.
All right. Yes, and I would like to do this just slightly different.
Yes, please.
This evening. I am going to, there are a few questions here, but I would like to actually have these individuals ask the questions directly. We have Mr. Brad Davis, who many of you know. He's a band director over at the Cannon School. So Brad, would you mind asking your questions?
Yeah, sure. Good to see all you guys. Good to hear from you. I have followed y'all from when y'all, all of y'all way back when you were in Jazz Arts. So it's good to catch up with you guys now. So I'm a high school band director. I've always strove to have jazz in my program as a centerpiece of my program. But that said, I always want to up my game for sure. And to make things better for the you guys of the future, you dig? So my question is this: based upon your musical journey through your high school years, what worked well for you and what were you maybe missing in your jazz education? Obviously recognizing the hookup that you got through Jazz Arts, but through your high school years, like if you could talk to band teachers out there, what do we need to know?
So my high school didn't really have much of a jazz program at all. So this might not be the same with other people's experiences. But there was no talking about improvisation. It was, if we did jazz, we were reading it off of sheets. We were not improvising, which I'm sure you're already teaching that already. But that was something that I would not have gotten if I had not been a part of Jazz Arts. Sure. And also learning things by ear. There's a lot of students going through high school, they never have that experience. And so not only learning to improvise over chord changes and lead sheets, but also learning tunes by ear, learning arrangements by ear, and playing with each other without using music at all is really important.
Right on.
I agree completely with that. And just to get a little bit more specific, something that bothered me a lot about a lot of the middle and high school jazz bands that I saw where their directors would pick repertoire that was pretty much just modal, kids soloing over one chord or maybe two chords, and never really getting the experience of a 2-5-1, which most of the rest of jazz music kind of revolves around.
Sure.
So you get a bunch of kids who play the pentatonic scale and it sounds good over 2 chords, and they never understand how chord changes actually work or how to be able to put it together later on. So I know I'm getting a little bit nitpicky on that point, but
no, that's solid, definitely.
I think it made a big difference.
Yeah, another thing I was just thinking about is the significance of just listening to records. I think one thing that a lot of my friends now, a lot of us do, we just get together and listen to music, and we just try to dive into it and listen very, very closely to everything that's happening and really understand it. And so I think just being able, one thing that I've noticed, especially now, like jumping straight from being in school to being a teacher now as well, there's something, I'm sure you've also noticed this also as well. There's something interesting, like when a student notices the teacher's passion and their joy and their exuberance about this thing, and it's like it translates. It's like osmosis almost. It's like whenever somebody said records, what's that? Oh, that's funny. But,
they're
yeah,
back
I mean,
now.
just
So.
right, yeah. But there's something interesting that happens when a student sees the teacher's passion about something, and so I think just trying to find something that that puts that twinkle in their eye, and just trying to see that moment and take advantage of that and try to expose that student to more stuff, I think like the stuff that I really remember is the stuff when people would give me something that I could sit with for a while. And whenever I see any other mentors, people I talk to a lot, they always talk about, man, I remember the first record, like my neighbor gave me this record or this or that. And even if it's not in the academic setting, but I think being able to do that in the academic setting, will definitely help a lot, because people are going to be able to go back to those records forever, and you're learning directly from the source at that point.
That's right.
And once you have that reference point of how it sounds and how it feels, because it's all a feeling, and then what you're playing is just kind of a means to get to that feeling. Then I feel like I think that's a huge thing. That's paramount for me.
Right on.
All right.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brad.
Yes, thank you, Brad.
Thank you, guys. Keep swinging.
All right.
Proud of y'all.
Thanks. Yes, I would like to go ahead and go on to the next question. Let's see, Miss Barbara Burge, are you there, Barbara? See if you wouldn't mind asking the question to our young ladies, and if not, I can certainly read it off for you. Hello, hello. All righty. Well, because I don't see Barbara, I'll go ahead and ask the question, and some of you may have already read it.
Is that me, the Barbara, or a different Barbara?
No, this is another Barbara.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. So this is from Barbara Burge, and she wants to know, other than being a minority, have the women alums experienced sexism in the music programs? And so that would be for you, Veronica, and you, Julia.
Julia.
Don't all speak at once. It's okay.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we could have a 10-hour Zoom on this. The short answer is yes. And I think that Terry Lynn Carrington, who I said, has been a huge influence for me this year. She runs the Jazz and Gender Justice Institute at Berkeley. I think she said it really well to me once. She said, "It seems to me that the women who succeed have to be of a certain personality type." And that doesn't seem right. When, successful men are afforded a diversity of personality types, it seems that successful women kind of have to be a certain way, and we get certain labels. And I would be curious to know Julia's thoughts on that too. But yeah, I mean, there's kind of the very explicit sexism and sort of verbal assault or, other kinds of assault. And definitely that goes on, and you can read the statistics about the music industry. It's pretty rough. And definitely there are a lot of people who abuse power in those ways, which like were things that I experienced as soon as I got to college. And so again, that was sort of what I was referring to earlier, is like sort of a bit of a culture shock for me. So there's that, but then there's also just psychological effects that I feel like, you know, are still lasting from just, you know, imposter syndrome and sort of these psychological effects that I feel like I still live with, but, you know, potentially might live with for, you know, my whole life. But it's just sort of not ever seeing someone who looks like yourself doing what you're doing. And that definitely has a psychological impact. It's a little hard to explain, but in some ways I will also say that it has freed me up. I feel much less beholden to have to play a certain way and to do a certain thing or to fit certain categories, because I simply, you know, am not in those clubs in the first place. So I feel much freer to do my own thing, as I think is pretty obvious from just everything I'm doing. I feel like I sort of don't like categories and don't feel the need for labels. And so, like I said, I think it can be liberating. But yeah, that's just the tip of the iceberg there. But
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I really loved being at UNCG, and I didn't have any like particularly rough experiences there, even though I was one of the only women, because there's such like really great leadership in that jazz program, and I really loved being there. I think in general for young women getting into jazz, just knowing that the expectations for you when you walk into a room with people you don't know who are jazz musicians, the expectations for you are so low. You know, nobody expects that you can play. Like when you walk into a jam session, if you don't know them already and they don't know you, then the expectations are so low. And that sort of becomes, I think, for a lot of young women getting into it who realize that they are a minority and that those are the expectations for them, that becomes sort of part of their own view of themselves. So I think that's one of the biggest like current dangers for like young women getting into jazz.
Okay, great answers. Thank you to both of you. Lonnie, do we have maybe one more where I know we're running toward the end of our time? Do we have perhaps one or maybe
Yes,
two more
we
questions?
actually do. We have Mr. Fred Lassiter. Are you there, Fred? Would you like to ask your question directly? Let's see. I will unmute you, sir, if you are ready. Hello, hello.
Am I unmuted now?
Yeah, go ahead. Thank
Hear you loud and clear.
I've been playing guitar since I was a young man, and it's been several years now. And I've been spending time the last few years trying to learn to play jazz. And I'm just looking for opportunities to play with people. Where can you find other amateurs who want to have, where are the jam sessions? Where are the people playing that don't mind an amateur sitting in with them?
Right. Thank you for your question, Fred. I could, I guess, chime in there. Right now, of course, with COVID, there's
I understand COVID, yes.
yeah, of course, because of COVID, there are not many options. I would certainly encourage you to try and get to know some of the local musicians, and I think, you know, they would certainly be, you know, welcoming and allowing you to, you know, to sit in with them, you know, if it is that type of an opportunity, that type of gig. But there are performances out there, or gigs out there that are, you know, marketed as jam sessions. But unfortunately, after COVID, no one really knows what that's going to look like, you know, and if those opportunities are going to resume. But there were quite a few prior to our, you know, our quarantine. But I would be happy to get your information, and I could share with you some of those.
If you can tell me where these people are hanging out when things get back to normal, hopefully. Where do you find these musicians? How do I meet these people?
Okay, yes, I would be happy to connect with you, and we could certainly get you some information about that. That would be great.
Can you connect with me through my email, or?
Yes.
You have my information?
please do send me your email in the chat, and we could pick this conversation up after our conversation with our guests here. Thank you so much. All right.
And one more. Do we have
yeah.
one more? Yeah.
I believe we have one more. Yes, Mr. Kevin Patterson.
Yes.
Have Mr. Patterson, are you there? Please do, if you're able to ask your question. And if not, I can certainly ask it for him. He wants to know from Sean.
Oh, I'm here. Hey,
oh, there you go. All right.
There he
hello,
is.
everybody.
Awesome. There you go.
First of all, Sean, tell us about your fashion sense and your fashion business. What's going on with that? At least pre-COVID and maybe even online now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't find great interest in talking too much about myself, but I think that music and fashion share a lot of things, especially jazz, and I'm interested in that connection.
Oh, that was a short answer. We've seen all your pictures on Facebook and the like. And Lonnie, if you don't mind, I got to ask one other question. This is to Veronica, because Veronica has, every time I see her, she is such a star. And not only musically, but from a leadership perspective. And I'm curious to know, as in your freshman year, I know you brought a lot of your leadership qualities with you. How did people take that? First of all, I love the way you articulated the issues that women have to deal with. But how did that work, being a woman, being the only one, but also having those strong leadership qualities that you have? Any comments on that?
Oh, thank you so much. It's interesting. College feels like another life now. So I think, sort of piggybacking off of what I said earlier, I think, women who tend to have, more sort of leadership sensibilities, maybe are a little bit more, like to take initiative. I think that can often be painted as, a woman being aggressive or bossy. But I will say that I think, I've learned to walk that tightrope a lot of, trying to get my ideas out, but also learning to, listen, be a good listener, be a good team player too. I think all of that's really important. And, hopefully that's been going over well. But yeah, I think the cool thing about being where I am is like I'm around so many other young people who are also, just incredibly driven, and I'm around so many leaders. And so it is interesting to be in an environment with so many people who are kind of, who I think a lot of us have a very similar personality type, especially at Harvard. It's kind of, it's an interesting environment because everyone's doing their own thing, whether it's like physics or music or, whatever it is, but they're just incredibly driven and, incredible in whatever they're doing. And so it's definitely an interesting, it's definitely an interesting vibe, but it's a lot of fun and I'm learning a lot from my peers, so.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kevin, for the question. Thank you, Veronica, for that answer. And thank you to all of our All-Stars. Once again, to Veronica Leahy, as we just heard from, Emmanuel Wynter, Julia Whalen, Phillip Howe, Luther Allison, and Sean Mason. Thank you all for what you're doing musically. Thank you all for spending some time with us this evening and just having this wonderful reunion and being here for our Jazz Arts audience. And speaking of the Jazz Arts audience, again, thank you to all of you for all that you do and the ways that you support us at Jazz Arts Charlotte. And we really, truly couldn't do what we do without you. Just want to let you know before you all go if you want to hear more from some of our alumni, we will be having the alumni at performance. That's our Live at Crown series coming up on the 6th of August. We're going to have an alumni performance. And then following that by 2 weeks, one of our all-stars that you heard from tonight, Mr. Luther Allison, and his trio will be live at Crown. So make sure that you're around for those performances. And once again, we would love to have you be a part of what is going on there. Now, the next time we'll have conversations with Curtis will be on Tuesday, August 11th. You know, we're on a skip week, so we'll be back on Tuesday, August 11th. We'll have more details about the exciting guests we're having coming up then. Hear me now and always on my station, that is Kurt Jazz Radio, 24/7 on Live 365, playing the best jazz ever. My name is Curtis Davenport. Thanks again. I turn it back over to Lonnie to wrap it up for us. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Curtis. And thank you to all of our guests. I just had to add that one last picture because it was pretty funny. I hope you guys got a good look at it. Hope you got a good look at it. But again, thanks to all of you. It was such a pleasure to see you. And of course, we miss you very much, but we're also very, very proud of you. And many of our other students who we just didn't have enough space to have on this conversation, but hopefully we'll be able to do this again and add more of our alums from previous years. But again, thank you all. Thank you everyone who are joining us this evening. And I did want to just say a couple of words. If you don't know about Jazz Arts, please do visit our website. We are a Charlotte-based nonprofit organization, and our mission is to connect the community and develop a jazz audience through quality education, performance, and musician support. We thank our donors and our sponsors, and if you have the capacity to support our programs, please do, because they may be students like the ones that you see here on our show, and we're always looking to continue that pipeline. So thank you guys again for your support, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Good evening, everybody. Thank you.
Good night, folks.
Good night. Thank you all.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
It was fun. Good to see everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
See you too. Bye-bye now.